Right, everybody, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll make a start on today's strategic planning. Item 1, membership of the committee. I know we've got one member coming, but she'll be coming slightly late. That's Councillor Richards. If I can just remind everybody to put phones on either silent or vibrate, switch them off, whatever. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree them as a true record? Thank you. Right, item 3, interests and lobbying. So I'll start with Councillor Kane first.
I've had a letter from the first application. That's the agenda item 9.
Councillor Patterson.
Ditto. I've had the same letter.
Councillor
And me as well.
Yeah. Donna.
Same letter, Chair, and also application on page 51. I've been lobbied by supporters, but no action taken.
Councillor Firth.
Page 23, the first one.
Page 23, first plan, no action taken.
Yeah, and myself the same, page 23. Item 4, this is a admission of the public. This is a meeting done in public. We are being webcast as well. Item 5, any deputations or petitions? No. Item 6, any questions? No. Item 7, we did go to site visit this morning, Marsden. And item 8, we have an update. David.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of appeals, just to do a very brief summary of the appeal decision at Brockholes, which is Woodhead Road. Members will recall that this application was presented to the 30th of November Strategic Planning Committee. There were 2 reasons for refusal. One was the proposed access arrangements that would significantly harm highway safety and efficiency, contrary to the relevant policies of the local plan and UDP, and also an absence of a completed Section 106 agreement. So, at appeal, the inspector commented that the new priority junction following the realignment of Woodhead Road would be at the end of a sweeping bend on a downhill section, and vehicle speeds would be in excess of 40 miles per hour. The location of the access would fail to provide recommended forward stopping distance for northbound traffic, and he concluded that this would prejudice the safe and efficient operation of Woodhead Road, so the appeal was dismissed. Thanks, Chair.
After that, move on to our first item today, which is on page 23. And this is Queensgate House, Huddersfield. Bill.
Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal that came before the last strategic committee for a position statement. Obviously, since then, they've provided some additional information and we're now bringing it forward for determination. The site relates to Queensgate House, which is located fronting onto the ring road at the junction with Chapel Hill. To the rear of the building is Chapel Street. Currently, the building is occupied is a 3-4-storey building. The ground floors are occupied by the county court, and the upper floor is vacant. There's a small car parking area in the front there, and there is also access to the basement of the building up Chapel Street. The proposal is to remodel and extend the existing building to a height of 6 stories on the front and 7 stories on the back. The remodelling will involve the stripping of the existing cladding, utilising the existing frame to extend upwards to create the additional accommodation. The use would be for student accommodation, a total of 156 bedrooms in the format of pods, with including student accommodation, communal accommodation, kitchens, dining rooms, etc., as well as gym, gymnasium, a hub, and areas in the basement for cycle storage and waste disposal. Access to the basement will be taken from Chapel Street via the existing access point, which is here. And there will be no disturbance of existing There are existing parking areas along the frontage, along this frontage, but they won't be disturbed. The access will be taken off the existing access. Proposals. So let's get some photographs. Right. So that's the existing. The shaded area is the existing building. The red outline indicates the extent of the difference of the floor area, of the height, so you can see the roof height different there, and the difference in height relative to what's there at the minute. And there are a number of perspectives relative to existing permissions that have been granted. This is looking up the ring road. This is the proposed building here. And this is what was granted on the neighbouring site for us, again for student accommodation and retail on the ground floor. This is the view from the sports centre down the road there to that's the building there again. That is the building, the neighbouring student building. That's the finished height of the extension that was agreed for the co-op building on the other side of the road. And that's obviously the actual plan detail there. And that's the gable elevation. Issues before you. In terms of the principle of development, the site is unallocated on the UDP, but was last and is currently used for employment use. As such, policy B4 of the UDP and PLP8 of the emerging local plan are relevant. These presume in favour of retaining employment land and employment buildings, unless it can be demonstrated the site is no longer suitable or likely to be reused for employment use, and that an alternative use would not prejudice any neighbouring employment uses or operations. Also relevance to this scheme is the fact that this is an office use class B1, and as part and parcel of the General Permitted Development Order, a change of use provision exists whereby B1 can be changed to residential class C3 without needing planning permission and through the prior notification order. Student accommodation is included as residential accommodation for the purposes of our delivery of our 5-year housing supply in this format, and that's been confirmed in the latest NPPF, Part 5 of that NPPF. So, notwithstanding the B4 use, the provisions of the GPDO would not be superseded by any refusal here. As such, we think it's unlikely that a refusal based on policy B4 or PLP8 would be able to be sustained at a appeal. In terms of the appearance and impact of character of the building, this is something that obviously members commented on previously at the last meeting. The originally submitted scheme, which was a very unorthodox design with a very unorthodox roof style, has been extensively modified in negotiation with ourselves, our conservation design and the applicants to a much more traditional appearance, incorporating a dual pitch roof, incorporation of large areas of stone on the ground floor, a more conventional vertical emphasis for the fenestration, which we believe is much more reflective of the character of the surrounding area and the Huddersfield's heritage. Conservation design have raised no objections to the amended scheme, subject to conditions. Also, relevance is, as I've mentioned before, in considering this scheme, its scale and appearance is the scale and appearance of neighbouring schemes that have been approved by this committee and by officers. In terms of highways, there are no objections from a highways point of view. It is a sustainable location, and so it's very easily accessed to the university. The only thing to mention would be that as part and parcel of the neighbouring scheme that was granted and future aspirations for highways to potentially improve this junction, there's a very small piece of land along this frontage that we would like to safeguard to ensure that any potential highway improvement along this junction is deliverable. And that would be a very small piece of land, doesn't affect the layout or anything, but that would be secured by a Section 106 agreement. Other technical issues, the drainage can be dealt with by way of condition as can air quality. And the final thing to say is that whilst this is a residential use or quasi-residential use, the technical reports on noise, air quality and pollution and noise have confirmed that this site can be developed for a residential use, as was the case on the neighbouring site, without prejudicing the continued use of the neighbouring employment factory, which in this case is Broadbents. So our recommendation is before you. It's to recommend approval, delegate to officers to secure the signing of the Section 106 to safeguard the small strip of land for the highway improvement, and impose all of the relevant conditions that are on the bottom of your list. Thank you.
I've got 3 speakers. First one is Helen Marks.
Good afternoon. My name is Helen Marks and I'm planning consultant for the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My client evidently welcomes the officer's recommendation for approval, which has been secured working closely with planning officers on the use of the building and the design. In light of the recommendation, I am going to briefly address the context of the application, so supporting the comments made in the officer's report. Yeah, there you go. Lauren Wedburn will talk to the design on behalf of the architects Falconer Brown. Essentially, the application has been submitted by our client given the uncertainty around the future occupation of the building by the county court and the lack of interest from any other office-type use. We have written to members of the committee to set this position out and to respond to previous correspondence which we understand was circulated by the Ministry of Justice on behalf of the county court. The county court occupies the lower 2 floors of the building. The lease expired last year and the county court is currently holding over. Negotiations have been ongoing since last year, but to date the county court is only seeking a short-term lease with a 3-year break clause. Most recently, 4 alternative options were put to the county court, including lease of the whole building and the freehold, but no response has been received to date. The 2nd floor of the building is vacant and has been for 8 years, with the exception of a short-term lease which expired 4 years ago. Despite marketing, this space has not been re-let. The lack of demand for the 2nd floor and the lack of commitment by the county court is not unique to Queensgate House. As members will be aware, there's other vacant office space within Huddersfield, including Crown House. Our client needs to find a viable long-term use for the building for reasons of bank lending, and also repair is required to the building, including the roof. The current proposal for student accommodation was developed in knowledge of the council's strategy to support the university. This is set out in the adopted plan and is stated in the officer report. Student accommodation to meet housing need is supported at a national level. The officer's report accepts the argument that it is no longer feasible to retain the building in employment use in accordance with the adopted policies, and it highlights that the building can be converted to residential accommodation via the prior approval route. As a backstop, we've now submitted this application to convert the building to residential. However, in our view, it would be a missed opportunity as it does not include alterations to the building given its flagship location and a gateway location close to the university. We hope that members can support the officer's recommendations on this basis. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass to Lauren Wedburn.
Next, I've got Lauren Wedderburn, is it? You have 3 minutes, Lauren.
Thank you for inviting me to present to you today. The main objective for this development is to transform Queensgate House into a distinctive, sustainable development worthy of its prominent location at a key gateway into Huddersfield Town Centre, providing high-quality, purpose-built student accommodation. The proposals you're considering today have been developed alongside the design and conservation officers at Kirklees Council.
I'm sorry, I think one of the members is
sorry. This is on, isn't it? Sorry. The existing building envelope is dated and in need of repair and does not provide the high acoustic and thermal specifications required for residential use. Therefore, the proposals will replace the roof and cladding but retain and reuse the existing structural frame. To maximise the site's potential, the structure will be extended vertically by 6 metres, and this brings the proposal into a similar scale to that of the recently approved vertical extension to the listed co-op building, which is directly opposite. The design solution is inspired by Huddersfield's familiar building typology, referencing the proportions and repetitive punched window openings of the historic mills and the simple sawtooth roof lines of the factories and warehouses. These references create a strong dialogue between the old and the new, and our design approach was very much to create a modern interpretation of the surrounding historic context and not just an inauthentic copy of it. The north and south facades, which express the regular rhythm of the bedrooms inside, are broken vertically into 3 different parts. The robust plinth at the ground floor grounds the building in high-quality traditional stone, which is punctuated by large areas of floor-to-ceiling glazing, revealing the activity inside the entrance lobby and student hub space. Above the plinth, the tones and textures of the surrounding stone buildings are complemented by a contemporary brick in yellow, grey and brown tones. And the small format of the brickwork and detailed coursing adds texture, and recessed rainwater pipes create neat contemporary details and vertical visual breaks. Dormer windows then break the eaves line to create visual interest to the roofscape. The east and west elevations are expressed as double gables, echoing the sawtooth roof profiles that are dominant within the industrial context of Chapel Hill. Externally, upgraded hard and soft landscaping will link the proposed development with the approved student housing directly to the east, increasing footfall to the proposed retail spaces that frame the courtyard. We believe our proposals make best use of a great opportunity to signpost the town's thriving university campus with a building that's contemporary in its detailing, while at the same time is of its context through its mass and familiar material palette. Thank you.
Next, it's Amy Harden.
Hello, my name is Amy Horton. I'm a planning consultant at GVA. I'm here today on behalf of my client, the Ministry of Justice, to object to this application, which will see the remodelling of Queensgate House for student accommodation. Huddersfield County Court and Family Court have operated from Queensgate House since the 1990s. To clarify, the courts actually occupy 2/3 of the building, 14,000 square foot of the total 21,000 square foot available. It's my client's preference and intention that the courts remain active from Queensgate House for the foreseeable future, and accordingly have been actively engaged in negotiations to extend their tenancy agreement. The emerging Kirklees local plan identifies Queensgate House as being within a priority employment area, where employment generating uses are supported by policy PLP 8. Under this policy, the change of use of premises last used for employment will only be supported where it can be demonstrated that the premises are no longer capable of supporting employment generating uses. The Kirklees local plan has now been examined and considered to be sound by the inspector, subject to modifications. Consequently, weight should be applied to this policy and its objectives in determining the application. Whilst not a traditional B-class employment generating use, 27 full-time staff are directly employed at the courts. That's 27 skilled jobs that could be lost from Huddersfield if the courts are to be relocated. At present, no suitable alternative premises are available in the town that meet the court's needs. Therefore, the courts and the important civic function they fulfil will likely move out of Huddersfield and potentially outside Kirklees County. This will undoubtedly have knock-on effects across associated businesses in the area. The Ministry of Justice wants the county and family courts to remain in operation at Queensgate House. There is therefore clear demand for the retention of employment-generating uses at Queensgate House. The proposals are therefore in conflict with emerging policy PLP 8. Furthermore, providing 156 residential dwellings in this area may prejudice the wider priority employment area coming forward for future employment uses due to potential impacts on residential amenity, potential restrictions on operating hours, delivery times and types of processes permissible are all foreseeable, thereby potentially impacting on the viability and attractiveness of the priority employment area to future occupiers. Again, this is in direct conflict with the requirements of Policy PLP 8. In summary, granting permission for the redevelopment of Queensgate House would be contrary to the up-to-date policy objectives of the emerging Kirklees local plan, will result in the loss of employment-generating use, and will result in the loss of a key civil function for Huddersfield and Kirklees Council. We respectfully request that the committee votes to refuse this application on these grounds.
Colleagues, it's up to you. Councillor Patterson.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I still firmly am opposed to this scheme for all sorts of reasons, but I suppose it could actually be summed up by what the comments from the Huddersfield Civic Society in 7.2. I do think it's overdevelopment. I do think it's too large. I do think the design is not very good. I don't like the fact that it's brick, that the vast majority of it is brick. I do think it is employment land or employment use, and so would be a change of use. I don't think we need any more student housing. We've heard that from the university ourselves. I myself have heard from others in business in Huddersfield that we need more office accommodation. It might not be the office accommodation that's actually being, which is available in the 1/3 of the current building, but I would have thought that spending some of the money that people would be, or the owners are prepared to spend on making this building larger, etc., could actually be spent on providing office accommodation to modern standards, which people might actually want to rent. I think you can almost draw a line at this point, almost between what you might say is the civic quarter and the university quarter. But if you just drive around the ring road, the university has taken a lot of effort to put some good buildings on that ring road, which are big or large, but they're not as overpowering as this one will be, and they certainly don't stick out like a sore thumb in the same way as this one would do. There's a good sweep of buildings on the southern part of the ring road as you drive around there, on both sides, and until you get to round about this point. And I would like to see some decent design. Well, there's nothing wrong with the current building as far as I'm concerned, but it could be surrounded by better designed properties. It's not the best building in the world, but it certainly doesn't deserve being taken down, and which is another point. This is basically a new build. It isn't renovation or change of use. It is taking down the complete cladding and rebuilding it. I could go on. There are so many things in this report that I'm unhappy with. Even the bin storage. I don't know exactly what the new arrangements are for bin storage, but I can well see 156 students come June, July. It would be Newsom ward, not my ward, but I mean they would be plagued with God knows what dumped outside it. But anyway, that's it. So I'm sorry. I think, yes, I think I've said enough.
Thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with a lot of what Councillor Patterson has said. I am unhappy with this. There are two issues, basically. One is the design of the building and its position in the landscape. I well remember when we were looking at the position statement at the last meeting, being quite struck by how prominent the building appears if you're driving up the road and coming up Chapel Hill. It sort of rears up into the air, and the fact that it's at the top of the hill on Chapel Hill just makes its over dominance of surrounding area even more complete. That I don't like. I think it's and because the design is not specially imaginative and is in fact rather plain, I don't think does anything to help. Then we come to the issue of the court. Perhaps this is a slightly ticklish issue from a planning point of view, but I noticed in the letter that's appended to our report, near the bottom on page 35, the person who's written this has said that it would not be, this could be one reason for refusing it, because we're removing employment possibilities. What I'd also try and get over is that I think it's important that because we've got a county court here already, that we should do our best to keep it. But I'm not quite sure how you represent that in planning terms. It's a little bit awkward. Certainly, I think there are planning grounds for refusing it. One, because you're taking away employment uses, and two, the overbearing nature of the building. And certainly, if I were, I'll go ahead and propose refusal on those grounds, hoping that they are acceptable. Whether we can do anything about the court issue, I'll leave for further discussion.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to ask why we didn't get the letter from the court, but I think it's blatantly obvious. Is this a departure from the UDP? Is it unallocated? Is it unallocated total? Yeah.
On the UDP, this is unallocated.
Right.
Yeah, but unallocated land are obviously subject to all any other relevant policies, which is why we've mentioned before, which is the employment policy. Right. But it's not a departure in that way.
Right.
No.
But in the new local plan, it is down as employment.
No. In the new local plan, all of this area, going right the way down here, is a priority employment area.
Right.
Which is not the same thing as an employment allocation. If this were an allocation, if this were an allocation on the local plan or the UDP for employment,
yes,
that would be a departure.
Yes.
Yeah, but it isn't. It's called. Obviously, B1 is a form of employment, obviously.
Right.
But as I say, it's not a departure. Right. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I would still ask why we got this letter from the county co-op, because it should not be material in that case. Then that's my view. That's my view. The other point, I think the two previous speakers are exactly right. The one point that I certainly raised was about, it says it's more conventional in design. No, it isn't more conventional in design at all. And in particular, a steel roof. It's totally out of keeping. So the materials don't match the surrounding areas, and I would certainly be looking at refusing it on regarding them points alone, because it isn't. And the other sort of points I would ask, really, and we have covered this previously, is about the attenuation measures. What are the noise attenuation measures? Because this can be added at any particular time, and we don't know what they are. Would they actually meet the requirements? And once again, would it come back with various complaints of people saying, well, this is causing us particular issues? I just find the report a little bit wanting, to be quite honest with you. The other thing I would just add to that is, what is the size of these units, these particular units in floor area.
Right. Where do we start? In terms of attenuation, the necessary attenuation if it were to be a residential use, and it'd be the same if it were dealt with as a residential use through the prior approval, which still applies regardless of what this decision is. It's mainly to do with noise attenuation for the two sources, and there's been a noise report submitted with this which has been considered by our environmental health. And it's to do with two noise sources, obviously road, potentially from the road, and obviously this business here. So the purpose of that is obviously to ensure that approved noise attenuation, which should be implemented prior to occupation, obviously makes it a decent place to live in, but doesn't prejudice road vents, which is exactly the same scenario as we had on the neighbouring property here. There's an approval for it's just expired now, but there was an approval for student accommodation at this point here, where exactly the same issue was tested as to how that might impact upon broadbents being able to operate as they have done since they went in.
Yeah.
So those are the attenuation measures, and I said the other one would be air quality, which would be obviously implemented to ensure that the ventilation and so on in the building was satisfactory. Those are the attenuation measures.
And that would have been approved prior to occupation or prior to construction?
Well, prior to occupation.
Exactly.
So we'd have to have a scheme.
Exactly.
A scheme approved.
You've answered my question. You've answered my question. Can you just answer my question regarding the floor sizes? Sizes of each individual flat.
Yeah. There's a plan.
Is it?
So this is the ground floor, but these are pods, yeah. So basically, you have a series of study bedrooms with an ensuite bathroom. They're about, I don't know exactly what the size are, but they will be around 20, so 21, something like that, which is what we were talking about yesterday. But these are also, there are communal facilities here, so there's a communal kitchen, dining area, for example, with each of the pods.
Then why aren't we conditioning it just for student accommodation?
We are recommending that. It's on the bottom of the list. So.
It isn't in the conditions, is it?
It's on the list at the bottom of the conditions. I thought it was.
Development occupied. Sorry, I apologise. It's there. Sorry, Bill.
No, we would do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's right at the bottom. It's the bottom one. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. This site is a very imposing one, right at the top of Chapel Hill. Yeah, it was almost. But the thing is that at the moment there is a building there that is suitable for its size. If you're going to put extra floors on, it's going to absolutely dominate that area, and it's not going to be particularly pleasant in it. We've also got a court service that's in the bottom two floors, which I don't know how they've managed it, but they are in a very suitable building for people to be able to access it without lots of other people going in and out of the building. And I would hope that they would be able to continue there, because that is the sort of service that Kirklees needs. So
I'm not happy with the extension of the size, and I would hope for the existing court surface to be able to continue there. You may turn your microphone.
I shall turn it round this way now. Thank you, Chair. Well, all that's been said prior to me speaking now, I have got to agree with. First of all, the size of the building, the materials that's used, and everything else that goes with it. There is a piece on air quality, assessments and mitigation, which is environmental issues, noise and air quality. But it's not just that. The building today, as you look at it today, I never thought it was a good-looking building anyway, as it is now. You add another few floors onto it, it's going to look even worse. And it's the materials that are being used as well. So I can't really say I agree with anything that's about this building. I think it's best left as it is, as a court building. And if they want some more student accommodation, I'm sure we can find somewhere to build some student accommodation, not too far away. And it says, Hillary says, it's very dominant at the top of Chapel Hill. I was going to say Castle Hill then. It's very dominant at the top of Chapel Hill. When you approach it from Folly Oval, it stands out like a sore thumb. And looking at it, it isn't a particularly nice building, even on the drawing. And I guess it'll look just as bad, or probably even worse, if it got built. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think everybody's just about covered everything, so I'll second Councillor Pinnock for refusal. I know we get there eventually. And as everybody keeps bringing Castle Hill up, to be honest, I think if you add another however many floors to this, you probably aren't going to see Castle Hill from that ring road because it'll block it off entirely. So yeah, I think it's just too big with these floors, and it's just going to dominate the skyline there. So I'll quite happily second Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Just encapsulating what committee members have said there, quite a lot has gone into that. Thank you. I'm sure. So, as officers, obviously, we've stuck our neck out and we've said why we think it should be approved, and you've considered that and come back with a different view of the committee. I would advise that there are probably two reasons for refusal there. One could be if members found that could be on the employment, and the second one would be on design and dominance and overbearing. And I can read something along those lines, but in terms of employment, it would be contrary to policy B4 of the UDP and policy PLP8 of the publication local plan. And that is because those policies would protect employment unless it's adequately demonstrated that the site or premises is no longer capable of employment use. And the committee feels that that hasn't been adequately demonstrated. So moving on to the design element, officers would advise that it would be contrary to policy BE2 and of the UDP and PLP 24 of the emerging local plan by virtue of its form, scale, height, massing, and also members mentioned materials. So we would say that that would include policy B11 as well. Thank you, Chair.
It has been moved for refusal by Councillor Pinnock, being seconded by Councillor Bellamy. I agree with everything what you've all said. I went through it all again last night just to have a look at it and check things up, and I don't like it at all. So those in favour of refusing, please show. Against? 7-0. Thank you. Next, we move up to page 37. Move over to North Kirklees this time, and we're up at Ells Eaton. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that this application came to Strategic Planning Committee on the 7th of June, and at that time members resolved to delegate approval of the application subject to the imposition of conditions set out within the report at that time, in addition to securing details of a temporary construction access from Wakefield Road, phasing of the development and the use of slate for the roofs and natural stone for the front elevations of plots 1 to 3. The application is brought back to Strategic Committee as the applicant's agent has raised concerns that it would not be possible to provide a construction access from Wakefield Road. The reasons for this are set out within the report. Primarily, as there is a change in levels of approximately 2 metres across the site, the applicant states that if the development was to be constructed with access solely off Wakefield Road, this would require a slope with a gradient of 1 in 15 to be engineered for use for the development, which they consider would be impossible to do safely, logistically and economically. Sorry about this, I'll just scroll through to the end. The applicant proposes that the development can be constructed in 2 phases, and this is set out on the phasing plan shown here. So with phase 1 here, phase 2 here. So this phasing plan indicates that plots 1, 2 and 3 would be constructed first, as phase 1 shown in red, followed by plots 4 and 5. Contractors' own vehicles would enter the site at the same point as the new permanent driveway, although no construction vehicles would use Parkview during the construction of plots 1 to 3. Parkview would only be used by construction vehicles during phase 2, as shown here, for the construction of plots 4 and 5. More specific details have been requested from the applicant regarding the programming of the works, frequency and timing of deliveries, frequency of road closures, alternative vehicular and pedestrian routes, and proposals to liaise with residents. However, the applicant has not been able to provide the specific details in response to this request, as they will not be developing the site themselves. Notwithstanding this, officers consider that these matters could be dealt with by condition, and as set out in paragraph 10.19 of the report, it is suggested that at that stage, ward members could be consulted on the submitted details. All of the matters relating to the application remain as previously considered by members, and as such, the recommendation is as set out within the report with the conditions listed previously and those that were required by members at the June committee, and with the addition of specific details of the programming of the works. Thank you, Chair.
We've got one speaker, which is Andrew Keeling.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. The last committee, we sat and we listened to what you said about the construction management plan, and I was sat with the architect and we thought, yes, we'll drop a line down from the top to the bottom, put the ramp down, and that should solve the problems. We went away and started drawing that line, and the architect realised that basically it's physically not possible to get a suitable slope down from top to bottom because of the depth of the site and the difference in heights. So we looked at alternative solutions to try and work around that. One was using the little side access track as well, trying to use that as much as possible, but that's a private residence want to go to the back of the houses, and we didn't think that that was really appropriate to use that for construction traffic or any other kind of traffic that was associated with this site. So we looked at trying to take as much traffic as possible off Wakefield Road, which I think is the aim of what you wanted, and obviously that involves constructing the top 3 dwellings. So we can take traffic into there from Wakefield Road. That's not an issue because that's at the same level. The issue is obviously then with the 2 dwellings, which is down at the bottom of the site, which are down at the bottom of the site. It's proposed basically that we create the new access and use that to bring all the construction traffic in for that part of the site. So it will only be for the 2 dwellings, for the big vehicles, the construction traffic. And in terms of deliveries and such like, that's where they will take place. I don't think we've got any other alternative other than to say that to you. Now, your highway officers wanted more details from the developer on how he would, use banksmen, what size of vehicles, the number of deliveries, and how they would liaise with neighbours if necessary, if any road closures were necessary. I doubt they are, to be quite frank, because it's only 2 dwellings and not sort of major construction in the sense of a big development site. We can't provide those because the applicant isn't going to be the person organising all those things. He's going to sell the site on to somebody else who will come back. But what I would say to you members is that I think we will do the proposed phasing in front of you deals with the major issues and matters of principle about where to get in and out of the site, and everything else is absolutely uncontrollable via condition. And somebody who purchases this site will be aware of that condition and will have to provide you with a plan which can then be brought back here or to ward members as necessary. So I'd like to recommend your officer's recommendation to you. Thank you, members.
Councillor Kane.
Thanks, Chair. I know this site in particular, it's in my ward. I know most of the people that live down there. I would say a vast majority of them are invalid and find it extremely hard to get about. There is absolutely no footpath on the one side, it's an hard margin. So part of this report is wrong, where it says there's footpaths on both sides. It isn't an hard margin, and an hard margin doesn't allow for access either for someone in a mobility scooter or in actual fact walking. So there is an issue as far as that's concerned. The other thing is that the footpath that does go around, it has an height of about 2 foot or 600 millimetres that in itself will cause a problem because no machine will access that. So they would have to strip that footpath out to actually get access actually onto the site itself. Now that being said, I understand we've got to build properties. The construction transport that will go down there will be from the tradesman that's going down there, and certainly we can, as being said, Andy has just said, it's totally correct. We can restrict the number of traffic and whatever, and we can do whatever we possibly can. But in actual fact, it's all down to enforcement. And these people, I know for a fact, will be on the 3 ward members on a regular basis because this will get blocked. Because there's people going in and out of that road, and it's a very, very, I wouldn't say it's a narrow road, 2 cars can pass. I'm trying to be fair here as well. And but there's loads of cars going into the doctor's surgery, which accesses through Parkview as well. This is going to be a complete and utter nightmare. I don't think there's anything wrong with it as far as construction's concerned and the planning side of it. It's purely access and egress for these poor people that are living down there. And it's not their fault. It seriously isn't their fault that they've now had this thrust upon them. If we can restrict it in some way, it's quite strange. We went on the site visit this morning and Councillor Firth were talking about this crane. There was a permanent crane on a site, on a very, very small site. And if we could say to if it's at all possible, and I doubt whether it is, look, you've got to put a crane on there, so as you can manoeuvre a thing from Wakefield Road instead of going down Parkview. If we could possibly do that, then that would be fine. But you would still have to get machines into there to do the dig. I've no issues with that. But this is going to be a nightmare for these elderly people. This was not designed, them bungalows were not designed for any additional properties that come along at a later date. And Andy's exactly right about there's a little road at the side of it. That's totally unusable. It's just it's a little bit of an enigma, is this. How we're going to do it, God only knows. But we have got to look after them people that are living there. We've got to do it. I still feel strong enough to refuse it because of that. But I can understand members wanting to go ahead because it's 5 new properties and all the things that come from that. But I feel so strong about these people that actually live down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have got to agree with what Paul says, because at the end of the day, the reason they never did build any houses and finish that corner off is because they could never find a way of doing it without causing an uproar. Yes, if they could bring it in by skyhook, that wouldn't be so bad, but they can't do that. As it is, it's a very, very awkward place to build anything. I would think if you were putting a dog kennel up there, you'd have a problem. So at the end of the day, you've got to remember that there's a lot of people live down there, elderly people, and they're going to be under great stress for a long, long time if this goes through. I'm like Paul. I mean, if houses need to be built, they need to be built, but they need to be built where it's possible to build them. It's no good just because you find a bit of land there, you could just say, we'll build on this. Whether you can get tackle in there or not is immaterial. You know, you've got to remember that there are other people who've got to live there as well. So I will just, I'm not happy. As I say, I would recommend refusal on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that certainly the two speakers who've contributed so far have implied refusal of half of it, because it seems to me that we would be quite happy about the three houses fronting Wakefield Road, because they can be constructed without more or less without interfering in any way with the people who live on Park View. It's the two down the bottom that are the issue. But quite clearly what's in front of us, we would have to, I mean, if it were possible, approve the three at the front and refuse the two at the back. But I suspect you can't do that, not on this basis. You'd have to refuse the lot and ask them to put in another planning application. And I suppose then the question would need to be asked, well, is it viable without the two at the bottom? You might be tempted to suggest that it could be viable because of the expense of dealing with the construction of the two at the bottom. I don't know. We haven't got figures that would help us work that one out. But it does seem to me that although the applicants have clearly worked very hard to find a workable solution, that it won't work to our satisfaction or to the ideals that we would like to put forward. In other words, keeping existing residents away from undesirable construction traffic. And I don't see, except for the three at the front, that there's any way of doing that, as Councillor Kane has outlined. I'm not sure what the planning reasons would be for refusing it, but can we sort of think about that?
I'm trying to be conciliatory, to be quite honest with you. I know, and seriously, I want this to work. We passed it last time. We passed it to say, look, get a construction a management plan in place that stops that. And I wouldn't want to go back on that because I think that's fair. I really do think that's fair. But make it work. It's okay saying this is going to be sold on to somebody else, and it will be sold on to somebody else. There's no issues with that. It will do. Bloody hell, they've landed people on the moon, haven't they? So it can't get, if they can't sort this lot out, you know, so as they can, you know, get this so as the work from Wakefield Road, I would knock everything down and make sure it may be adjustment of some of the levels, and it may be that they'll have to be raised a little bit. But there's a way of actually doing this. You know, I talk about construction because I've been in construction for a long time. There is a way of doing it. But I don't want this to be refused for the sake of that. for the sake of this country. And, you know, we will have absolutely no control, and we're kidding ourselves, absolutely kidding ourselves, that we will stop people parking on Parkview. They will not. But what we have control over is deliveries. The deliveries of these vans and wagons that's fetching materials, and we don't want them to be going down Parkview. We want them to go in off Wakefield Road, because that would be totally unfair for these people down on Parkview. They're elderly, and they've got a duty to live their lives with the duty of care from us. That's what it's all about, and we should not be imposing this upon them.
Yeah, listen to what Paul's asked. Yeah, if there is a way, and I mean a proper way of doing it, without imposing a lot of bad feeling and harassment on the people who live there. I mean, I can think back, we've got one in Holmfirth, very, very similar. The plans were actually passed for that one, but there's nothing being built because there is no way they can get any equipment down to build it. Because nobody bothered to look into the front and say, well, this is how we're going to do it. When somebody finds out how to do it, then maybe something will get built. The same is applied here. If they can find a proper way, they've had long enough to sort something out, if they can find a way of getting in there, building those properties without causing any harassment to the neighbours, then fine. But we need to defer it and get them to come back with a proper setup. No, not just a piece of paper with a couple of paragraphs on. We need to see how they're going to do it. And if they can prove to us that they can do it with causing a minimum harassment to those people, then I will support it.
It's just back to the crane thing. Obviously, I wasn't on the bus, but I did go on the site visit, and I know exactly which crane you mean. Went on Manchester Road once. It's been there about 3 years, maybe 4 years. So, isn't there a physical way of using a crane? Because that site there, like I said, that crane has been there for a hell of a long time, because it is such a bad site for levels, because that house is being built really quite low down, and everything has been craned in. Every mortal thing has been craned across Manchester Road and down there. Guaranteed, like I said, it's been there about 3 or 4 years and they've used it. So is there a way that maybe you could crane things in and down there?
Okay, thanks, Chair. So, coming on a few of those points, obviously, as officers, we've gone away from the other committee. We've tried to negotiate and request the details firmly from the applicants, and there has been progress with the information that's come in, but, from your views there, it clearly doesn't meet the standards that you're requiring. I will just run through a couple of points. Councillor Kay mentioned about the footpath on the opposite side. Well, that was covered in the update, so we covered that in the update. We're aware that there isn't a footway on the back, on the opposite side. In terms of the crane, Councillor Bellamy and Councillor Kane, then I'm not aware of any conditions that have ever been applied in terms of enforcing that a crane would be used for construction. I would think that wouldn't pass the tests that are required for planning conditions. That would be our advice. It wouldn't be necessary in your view, but it wouldn't be reasonable. It wouldn't be reasonable is one of the tests that it wouldn't pass. In terms of what we also got, in terms of refusing part of the scheme and approving part of the scheme, we can't obviously do that, Councillor Pinnock. Okay, so that's essentially some of the points that you've said. Carol, and then Andrew.
Thank you. Yes, we approved it at the last meeting, and we asked for a construction management plan. And I think simply it's that we want to see within the 3 months the construction management plan. If the current owners aren't willing to provide that because they want to sell it on because it will make, they'll be able to make more money that way, then so be it. Perhaps the planning application fails and somebody who is prepared to provide a construction management plan should come back with it.
Yes, talking about construction management plans, it does seem to me that if we said the construction management plan had got to include building the lower 2 houses first, which might mean some adjustments in ground level to the top houses so that you could achieve a reasonable gradient, which would then be built back up again in order to build those houses. That's the kind of thing, it seems to me, might work. Now, from what the Speaker has said, it sounds as though that could be difficult. I don't think he said impossible, but that is, to me, that's the kind of thing I think we would have to see, that they built the 2 that were inaccessible other than from Parkview, and we've already said we don't want that to happen. So you build those 2 from Wakefield Road, and then the 3 in the front, which are easier. I don't know if that helps, but.
Through you, Chair, Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management. As you say, it's a matter of inconvenience and degree of inconvenience. We feel it can be accommodated safely in terms of highway safety, but there are other aspects, gaining access to the health centre, and obviously the residents who may have mobility issues. We did put the list on page 45, para 10.19, to the applicant, to which we felt was a steer in the right direction to answer those points, but with no joy actually in any response on that. In terms of, if it was to go for refusal, it would be on, I would suggest, on lack of information relating to the construction traffic, but I feel that these points could be addressed earlier at this current time with some effort. To me, addressing those points is a fairly easy exercise to put some meat around on the bones, if you like. Thank you, Chair.
Can we approve and then say that the construction management plan has got to be accepted by the ward members? No. Or then acceptable to the ward members.
You can't really. I don't think, Councillor King, we could put that into a condition. Yeah. But if we put a condition on that a construction management plan shall be submitted, and as officers we would consult ward members as to whether that was appropriate or not. Well, but it wouldn't go into the condition. That will be going back to the existing approval what we gave last time, won't it, really? Because nothing has really changed. Other than there's 5 houses rather than 3 houses. These questions have not been answered, David, that's all. Oh, in terms of that? Yeah. Yeah, you're correct, yeah. Donald.
Well, looking at it, the people who actually own this land who are put in these plans aren't interested in coming forward with any ideas at all. It's all written down here from us. Construction details, frequency of deliveries, likely frequency of road closures. They're fairly straightforward things to answer if you're interested in following these instructions. But nobody's actually come back, I believe, have they, to cover any of these points? Have they? 1019? So if they've not come back to answer any of these points, then, you know, what do? We just simply refuse it, and then they might come back with some points next time.
When you look at stuff, what they've done down in London, on other streets down there, when you look at stuff what they're doing, places such as Old Town in Benidorm, the crane stuff in, and it's done hard way. You know, where there's a will, there's a way, I'm sure, but I'm starting to lose my tether with this. I mean, do you want to give them another last chance deferral to come up with? Because it just looks to me as though the big issue is getting goods in and out, that's it. Christ, it should be bloody simple. It's 2018, man. Carol.
So, I mean, isn't it just actually, I'm not quite even sure really why this is here in some ways, other than, no, I'm not quite sure why this is here. I mean, we gave permission last time with various conditions, and the recommendation today is delegate approval of the application, in order to complete the list of conditions, including those contained in this report. And they're either going to, so if we agree that, they're either going to complete the list of conditions as contained in the report or not, in which case it will fall, will it not? Isn't it? I mean, am I oversimplifying it?
Could be complicating it.
Well, obviously the committee have a different view to officers here, don't they? They don't consider that there's enough information being submitted to give you comfort. Yeah. If that's what members want.
All those in favour of deferring, please show. 7-0. Thank you. We're on up to page 51. This is the Marsden Fire Station, Manchester Road, and it's, well,
Thank you, Chair.
just before Will starts with this application, we have got a viability report, so we'll see how it goes, but it might well be that at some point in time we might have to go into private session. So, eyes down, looking.
Thank you, Chair. My name is William Simcock and I'm the case officer for this application. The former Marsden Fire Station is located in Marsden Conservation Area, and this shows the wider context. I'll just blow this up a little. It is this building here. So yes, it's near the heart of the conservation area. It's on the south side of Manchester Road and very close to the village centre. This shows the approach to the site from the east, and this is a view from the junction with Peel Street. These are views across Manchester Road and from the west. And this is a view still further west, showing the Mountain Rescue Centre, or it's just out of view actually. And these two images are from Cars Road, which is above the site to the south, and this is the fire station building here and here. The proposal is for the demolition of the former fire station and the erection of 24 two-bedroom flats, 2 single-bedroom flats, and 1 dwelling house, and associated parking, landscaping, and a new vehicular access. The new apartments are to be arranged in 2 blocks of 3 stories each. The new dwelling house would be located on the site frontage and would incorporate the facade of the fire station building with some extensions, and will be linked to the larger apartment block. Natural coarse stone and artificial blue slate for the roof would be used. This is 3D artist's impression of the street view with the new dwelling house incorporating the facade of the old fire station, and this would be the larger of the 2 apartment blocks here. This is a section through the buildings as proposed, looking from the south, and floor plan, and I'll show you the elevations as well. Here are some photographs taken from within the site. The site is allocated for business, general industrial storage and distribution use in the unitary development plan. It is, however, allocated for housing within the publication, draft local plan, and the location, in officer's opinion, makes it far more suitable for housing than employment. The scheme was the subject of formal pre-application consultation. The site as a whole does not make a positive contribution to the conservation area, although the early 20th century fire station building is distinctive, and the scheme would recognise this by incorporating the facade into the new scheme. The immediate surrounding development is varied in scale and massing, and it is considered a 3-storey building. In this context, and seen at the bottom of the slope, would not appear overly dominant. Well, it's actually 2 3-storey buildings because it's been divided into two separate blocks. The new buildings would contain some features that are not very modern, typical of the area, and are somewhat modern appearance, including balconies. The balconies would be predominantly to the rear or southern elevation. This is the northern elevation that would appear to Manchester Road. The scheme incorporates features that would help to provide a vertical emphasis and break up what otherwise might be a rather slab-like appearance, including the recessed feature here where it says open access, and the tall narrow windows at the western end. It is considered that the development would preserve and enhance the character of the Marsden Conservation Area, subject to satisfactory materials, which details can be supplied by condition, and a landscaping scheme, including details of boundary treatments and to what extent the existing boundary walls are to be retained. It would also provide satisfactory space about buildings and privacy for existing future residents, subject to conditions requiring obscure glazing and screening where appropriate. Potential traffic noise can be addressed by condition also. The new access would provide acceptable visibility, and the internal layout would provide satisfactory turning space for vehicles, including an 11.85 metre refuse collection vehicle. The site does not provide any special constraints in relation to flood risk or biodiversity, and ground contamination can also be addressed by condition. As parking, total 31 spaces are shown within the development, which is considered acceptable for the location and for the type of development. Slight correction is in order to what was written in the appraisal in the officer's report. It says the standard requirement would be 0.5 of a space per each single bedroom flat. It's actually 1 space. And there is some gas infrastructure on the site that will need to be resited. Just 2 very small buildings here it is proposed that a new gas governor building can be erected near the highway frontage, subject to planning permission. On the subject of affordable housing, the Council's interim affordable housing policy states in the development of 11 or more dwellings, 20% of the total number of dwellings should be affordable, which would equate to 5 units in this case. The developer has submitted an appraisal demonstrating there are a number of abnormal costs on site, and as it would be a bespoke development to generate a long-term rental income stream, the developer has stated they will accept a lower profit margin than normal, and that this would allow the provision of 2 affordable rented units on site, which would be 20% below market value, although these would not be managed by registered social landlords, they'll be managed by the developer. And there's more detail of this in the briefing paper and the update. The developer has also indicated their willingness to make a contribution to sustainable travel, although the exact breakdown of what this can be spent on can be determined later. Both of these require entering into a Section 106 agreement. Some other general comments on the proposal. It would have the advantage of providing housing for single people or couples over the age of 55, as that is who it's going to be marketed to, in a location which is very sustainable, being quite close to Marsden Village Centre, on a bus route with a regular service, and also without steep gradients, which is useful for people who want to walk to the local shops or other facilities. And therefore it is actually a very suitable location for development of this type. To sum up, it is therefore recommended that the permission is granted for the application, subject to the conditions set out in the report and subject to the developer entering into a Section 106 agreement to provide 2 units as affordable housing and to contribute to sustainable transport initiatives. Thank you, Chair.
I've got 2 speakers. William Best.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak on behalf of the application. My name is William Best. I'm the agent for the applicant, SB Homes Limited. Just wanted to say a few brief words in support of this application. If approved, this application will bring the redundant fire station site back into reuse, will retain the facade of the former fire station, which, by also extending this, will reinforce the street elevation along Manchester Road. Access into the residential properties will be through the existing arched opening in the fire station facade, which leads into a secluded courtyard around which the dwellings are formed. This provides an overlooked landscaped courtyard for the residents to enjoy. The form of the buildings replicate a repetitive feature within Marsden, which is that of high moor buildings set behind low terraces with connecting alleys and streets. The walk through the arch into the courtyard reveals the new 3-storey buildings as one enters and provides a dramatic interface with the remaining facade and arch. These proposals I consider will provide much needed housing locally for rent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, members. My name is David Story. I'm a Chartered Town Planner speaking on behalf of the applicant. I'm just going to deal with the issue regarding affordable housing. And you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not here to argue that we don't want to provide any affordable housing. I just wanted to give you some context to the matter. We've submitted a viability report, and that's based upon selling houses as opposed to renting. and that showed that the profit margin was around about 13%, which is way below industry standard of 20%. And under normal circumstances, if you were looking at a market housing developer, they would walk away from this site. The only reason why we can actually accede to a request for affordable housing on this site is because the developer is a long-standing Colne Valley local developer who has long-term interest in the area and can take a longer-term view in terms of profit return. And it's for that reason that they can absorb the initial costs from this development at around 13%. In terms of the provision, it is rented accommodation and it's for a specific sector, which is the over 55s, and the 2 units will match that provision. We've had good discussions with your housing and planning colleagues to look at how that can be managed. Because of the nature of the beast and that the whole development will be for the over 55s and managed by the applicants, that would be appropriate. Those 2 units would be offered to the council to nominate people who meet the criteria, and they would be obviously rented at 20% below normal market value. That accords then with the provisions of the test itself. As I say, if this were a commercial for sale marketing scheme, no developer would touch it at those sort of returns. It's only because this developer can take a longer term view because of their local connections. And I think it's a win-win situation for the area then. This site has been empty for over 16 years and is badly in need of regeneration. And I hope that in terms of all the issues regarding the design, etc., that have been addressed through negotiation, that this is a scheme that you can support. Thank you.
Colleagues, it's over to you. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. At last. That might sound strange. I'm quite pleased something's been done with this, because to be honest, the way it looks at the moment, it looks an absolute eyesore. That site is a mess at the moment, and it's such a shame because that facade it's beautiful when it looks nice. I mean, it's been plagued by graffiti, antisocial behaviour, kids hanging around back, all sorts of stuff. So, to be honest, I was quite pleased when something came forward. To be honest, I'm pleased that it's a local developer as well. I've had quite a lot of dealings with a local developer, and I can honestly say from work that I've seen that he's done before, it's always done to a high standard, and he does generally look out for local people as well. In fact, I've been contacted by quite a lot of local people, lobbied. But on the nice side, I think he must have a waiting list for these already, because people keep contacting me saying, over 55, saying that, you know, there's a desperate need for this sort of accommodation in this area, and it's people that live locally now that want to stay in the area, and a lot of the houses in that area are obviously terraced and loads of steps and not suitable for the elderly at all. So generally, in complete principle, I'm really supportive of this. I know there has been obviously some sort of issues mentioned about maybe not enough parking spaces for visitors, but there is on-road parking straight across the road from there, outside the shops and across from the old fire station. There is a little bit of a section where you can park there anyway, so I don't see that as being a problem. So I don't think visitor car parking is, to be honest, a problem. There's a bus stop, ideally, outside, so if he's willing to put in some 106 towards, bus, something to do with bus, I can't see any problems whatsoever with this at all now. So, to be honest, I'm quite happy to move approval, and I'm more than happy to support this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I tend to agree with what's been said, but I'd like to make a couple of points. The first thing is, when we were on site, I noticed the state of the walls, particularly the one at the back, which is being pushed by various trees, not on land within the applicant's control, but certainly the boundary treatment, and I note there is a condition for landscaping, but the boundary treatment ought to be considered, and particularly the wall facing east, which will be most visible to people walking along Manchester Road, but also the one at the back of the site as well. Also, this question about real-time information displays at the nearest bus stop, singular. Which one are you going to use? Are you going to be able to go to Huddersfield or Manchester with real-time information? Ideally, you want both, but whether that's possible, I don't know. But you know, that's a bit of an invidious choice. How do you select it? The Manchester-bound side is right outside the site. I didn't notice where the one on the other side of the road was, but. And indeed, do any of the bus stops in Marsden have real-time information already? I wouldn't know that, but I think that needs to be clarified, because if you're just going to put it on one bus stop, which direction are you going to choose? So, but otherwise, I agree with that. I would second the motion to approve this.
Okay, through you, Chair. The applicant retains the ownership, but it's 20% off the rent. Because it's from the council list. The people, the tenants, are from the council list, and right. Well, that's what is proposed. That it's on the council list. I'll just turn. Yeah, the details go into the 106. I mean, it is a bespoke model. It has been used in other local authorities, whether it is for private rent. Yeah, they are owned by the applicant. Yes. No, it wouldn't be through an RSL. No. All I can say, Councillor Kane, is that obviously this application has been discussed with Housing Solutions all the way through very thoroughly, and it would be worked out into the section 106. I hope that answers it, but doesn't. Let me.
That's going to be in private session. Yeah.
We'll go into private session. Right, we're back live. We've had that debate about viability. David, you want to come in and advise everybody, all the thousands at home watching us this afternoon, where we are?
Thanks, Chair. So, following on from that discussion, members have requested further information. This is obviously for the applicant's knowledge as well. Requested further information about where a private rented model such as this has been used in other local authorities, and the level of success that these models have been operated with. There was additional information as well in terms of strategic housing's final position and the level of comfort that they would probably need to give the planning committee in terms of the affordable units. Thank you, Chair.
Andrew and then Carol.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I previously seconded a motion to approve this. I'd like to withdraw that and instead move that we defer it for the reasons that Mr. Wordsworth has mentioned. In other words, in order to get more information from strategic housing and more information about where this model has been used elsewhere.
Donna, are you okay with withdrawing your recommendation to accept?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's fine. In fact, I'll second Councillor Pinnock's recommendation.
Carol.
I mean, I think we wanted to add to that deferral so that we've got more information on the viability assessment as well, in terms of profit levels.
Right. Okay. So it's been moved for deferment by Councillor Donald. Right. Moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Bellamy to defer. Those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous, 7-0. And that's it today, colleagues. Thank you.